Foundation is an independent public policy think tank that was set up in Delhi in 1990. So we are in our 25th year in Delhi. The Mumbai office was set up in 2004, but most of us who are working there are doing so since 2009 when Mr. Kulkarni took over as chairman. And at that time we also chose areas of work as topics relevant to society. So we chose education, health, sustainable development, and so on. So what you see here on the screen is some of our publications in the last 5 years in education. And on the right-hand side top is the publication on the left-hand side bottom is a new publication on engineering education, where we're doing a case study on College of Engineering, Pune. So in the science education report, this work actually started. What we wanted to do was hear the voices of principals and faculty. And so we went around the country interviewing about 75 to 100 interviews we've done in 4 cities in India, 30 colleges, Delhi, Madras, Kolkata, Mumbai. And many of the findings are known. I think all of us who are here because we have an interest in education. So we know what the problems are. But I think for us, the first thing to recognize was that everywhere we went, faculty are doing an incredible job despite their constraints, despite their difficulties, despite not having the freedom that they ought to have. So that was very sort of feel good for us. But also the shock was that we found out that faculty are paid on a clock hour basis. I think some of you are familiar. For those who are not, you get paid 250 rupees for a 50-minute lecture. And some people have to do as many as 4 lectures a day, traveling between the locations where they have to do these lectures. So you can just imagine what their level of commitment to the students and their learning outcomes will be if you have this kind of setup. So I touched upon engineering education. I don't want to spend too much time on it now, but because we are in Pune, I'd like to say that based on the stupendous transformation of College of Engineering Pune in the last decade, we are trying to call for creating 100 IIT-like institutions. We call College of Engineering Pune an IIT-like institution. And the other observation that we have, which is why also Professor Sienna Rao's recommendations fell on very fertile ground, is that we realize that in order to bring change, we will need a lot of academics to be involved, because these colleges where the quality of education is not good, if you want to improve it, then clearly experts have to be engaged in some way. So that's what we are still mulling about how we go about doing it, but I just wanted to touch upon it. Yeah. So what are the things that we're really worrying about as a think tank? So from our perspective, what is this very, very serious worry is that there's simply not enough appreciation within the country, whether in academia or outside, about what is really the scale of the challenge that we are facing. Abhinav, if you could just go to the next slide. So this is the demographic profile of India, which was presented in the SAPPM report in 2010. And the first graph is India in 2000, and the second graph is India in 2025. That's 10 years from now. If you look at the numbers today, in July 2014, the bottom 3 bars, kids below the age of 15 is 350 million, 35 crores. If we are thinking about, if you could go back, if we are thinking about, even 30% GER, which is what the government is targeting, that's 100 million kids in higher education. Are we ready for them? Absolutely not. So, and right now the GER is 20%. That means 2 out of 10 kids who want it are getting a university education. All of us in this room are 1 out of 10 Indians who got a higher education. We are here because we got a higher education. Surely we have a responsibility to the other 9. And if you look at the infrastructure we have to teach kids, we have 28 million kids in higher education today, and we need 100 million in 10 years. And we are educating them in 37,000 colleges and 700 universities, whereas China is educating the same number in just 4,000 universities. So what is happening here is that we've got extreme fragmentation in which, only engineering students are put together, only commerce students are put together, only law students. There's absolutely no interdisciplinary exposure of any kind. So that's contributing in no small way toward quality education. Then we also have 9 lakh teachers in the system. And what is scary about that is that we are saying that state government-run colleges are not in very bad shape. There are 37,000 of them, and clearly most of them are not in good shape. But those very colleges are contributing 80% of the faculty. So you can just imagine what the cascading effect is on the quality of education. So when we look at these numbers, it's scary, and we just want to put it out there in the open and say, let's do something about it. So there's no sense of urgency with regard to reforms. So I want to leave education there for now. With regard to research, Pune, and we have Pune today and Bangalore tomorrow, and both there is a large number of researchers here. So I just wanted to touch on a few things that we have really too few researchers. That has to directly do with funding, of course, because you need to have more jobs actually. So if you look at that figure on the right, what you see, the pink symbol is a million population. And India has something like 150 researchers per million population. And each row is 1,000. So if you can look at the US, it's something like 4,000. And so is South Korea, and so is UK, and China's not that high, but it's much, much higher than us. So, this picture we got out of a report from the UK, which was actually praising India, because it says we are doing frugal innovation per dollar spent, our output is much higher. But I think that this number is scary. We cannot have so few researchers, because you need researchers and especially engineering researchers for wealth generation and for sustainable development solutions. So there is absolutely too little funding. There's not enough focus on technology development. Researchers are in silos. These are known, but I just wanted to highlight it. So to illustrate this thing about where we stand, I just want you to take a look at this picture. This picture I got out of a report of a gathering which was called Engineering 2.0, Rekindling American Ingenuity. The Americans had gathered, called together by a think tank, IT Innovation Forum in Washington, D.C., to look at their own performance. So if you look on the top, there is a circled bunch of 3 dots. Now those 3 dots, the biggest dot is 2009, and the small dot is 2007, and the medium-sized dot is 2008. What America was worried about, so on the left axis, on the x-axis is nanotech research activity. And on the y-axis is the capability of the country to develop technology out of nanotech. But if you look at them in terms of research, they are absolutely in ivory tower. But it is the countries in the right quadrant, that is Germany, South Korea, Taiwan, and Japan, who are actually much better at converting their research into technology. Now, if you look at nanotech, nanotech is an area in which I think Professor Rao led investment in research. So if you look at India, we are in the bottom left corner. And if you look at the level of research, we have to see that the level of research is not very bad, but we are off diagonal, which means that our ability to convert into technology is much poorer than our researchers. And this is something that we have to worry about, because we're not even spending on doing research in at least a few strategic areas. Now, I was a PhD student in IISc Bangalore, and I just want to mention that high temperature superconductivity exploded in 1986, and at that time in ceramic materials. And at that time we found out that Japan already had a ceramics program. They had 10 programs in which they were going to develop strategic strength. Ceramics was one of them. So this was in the 80s. Decade or so, we need to do that. I have not yet started on that. So, Aparna, the last slide. Yeah. So this manifesto, the present version of which you all have, was written by our chairman, Mr. Kulkarni himself, based on the first gathering, conclave that we had in Mumbai, in the presence of Professor C.N. Rao. And the idea is that we need a long-term strategy for quality human resource development in science and engineering aligned to national goals. And as a part of that, we not only need a wish list, we need an execution plan. And The idea of going around the country holding a series of conclaves is to look for inputs from all of you on both of them. So that's my call. So the last slide, I just want to say that we must have, we need to appreciate the scale of the challenge and work with a keen sense of urgency.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. First of all, let me thank the Observer Research Foundation and Pune International Center for involving ISER Pune in its activities, and I'm happy to see that some of my colleagues. So let's start about something which I'm familiar with, the creation of new institutes. The experience of creating the new institute like IISCRs, which people talk about that, and we had new IITs and new central universities. If you take just these three comparisons, of course, each of these institutions have different objectives. They do not have the same objectives, so the comparison is not right. But even in the way in which these have been established, the algorithm of establishment of these institutions, and within a short period of 5 to 8 or 9 years, since we have been here for about 8 years, the impact that has. I think we must learn some lessons from looking at the problems of establishing new institutions. Have we done, although we have taken the right step, was anything we could have done better? So one of the important things, which at least in ISER Pune we took was, for the success of any institute, this kind, the key thing, the really key is the faculty. We should not compromise in the quality of faculty. It's not just the recruitment of faculty, and just leave. You have to provide lots of, help for them, to establish research teaching, because ours is a research-led teaching institution. So I must also say the problem of education at the school level is different from, or at the undergraduate level, it is different from what happens at the research level. There is no single formula. We need to do that. So that is one of the things. So we must play, and that brings down to the scale factor what you mentioned. We said 30 million, or we had to be for 100 million. And if you go by the teacher-student ratio of 10 to 1, if you want to educate 100 million students, we require 10 million teachers. Where are they? The quality teachers, So we have to, I do not know what is the solution, how to train this large number of teachers. We really require a very, very large number of teachers. 10 million teachers, they just don't, sort of spring up. That becomes a very, very important thing. Coming back to, the reformation of 10 years, now I see that 25 years is very good. We must have a program. Irrespective of which government comes, who becomes the head, this has to become a mission-oriented program. Now, you talked about the education and the, you said that about 21 ministers have their own thing. Unfortunately, in India, education is considered as a business. In India, somehow, education as a philanthropic attitude, even by rich, is very, it's unfortunately. So that has to change that mindset, because and again, when it becomes a business, you concentrate mostly at the undergraduate level, because that's what pays you in terms of fee and other kind of things. They never invest anything in the higher research, because that doesn't pay you back. Unfortunately, what has happened is that coming to the engineering and medicine, which you mentioned, unlike the whole world where engineering and medicines are part of the university system, why today we find that the research culture is not so much prevalent in engineering and medicine, because they are away from the university stream. And that is something which has happened for whatever reason as a historic thing, but how do you bring engineering and medicine into the university system? That is a very, very important thing. And that also helps the so-called cross-fertilization aspects. And you also mentioned about MIT and the entrepreneurship. That's really amazing. Just about 3 weeks back, I spent a couple of days in MIT, and I just looked around. Every street has so many companies, and anybody who we talk, right from the postdoctoral level to the PhD level, that is ingrained in them. How do you convert your research into your product? Not wealth necessarily, but into your product. So that is something which has to start, the entrepreneurship. And I must say that you also mentioned about the nanotechnology. So what do you have to do in the next phase? How do you sort of develop this manufacturing sector to invest in that? But we know that India as a manufacturing sector, we are very weak. We have not been able to create wealth for investment because our manufacturing sector is weak. Unlike Chinese, who really made a lot of wealth because of their manufacturing sector, and today they're able to invest. So nano is a victim of that, I would say. Now, a couple of other things before I close. These were my immediate reactions, but as I said, this has all the things, there is policies. Policies are all very good, but will they succeed? If the same people have to do a different policy, it won't happen. The policies versus people is a very, very important thing. We have done in several institutions, we change the policy, but it is the same people. And the same people with the same kind of mental attitude, they will never be able to do that. So when you have this change of policies, you have to also have change of people who manage the MFS, who sort of believe, and making policy is one, but creating an implementation strategy, down to earth, that is something different. So education being a continuous process, you have to start thinking how you're going to change this attitude right from the school level. Suddenly you cannot have a phase change at an undergraduate level. Now, in fact, recently, there's not recently, but a couple of years back, in the United States, the National Science Agency, they formed a committee. All they asked was, what do you think should be the skill development program for the 21st century skills? Like problem solving. We all know about that, how to think logically. That's very, very important. Now, today we get a lot of information. How do you, for example, really filter it out? What is useful, what is rational? Collaborations, the teamwork and collaboration, hands-on experience, and the several things like flexibility, adaptability. Things keep changing. How do you adapt yourself? So many of these kinds of attributes which are required in the future skill, in the future society, we have to start imbibing them into the school education itself. And whereas we tend to put in lots of information. But even, we are a degree obsessed society. We want to have degrees. But does the degree mean anything? Like how do you separate, this degree from the usual education or the knowledge base? We have to really work into that. It requires a lot of things, reformation at the school level to be carried over that. Well, I can go on, but particularly, I would be very happy, but I don't have time, maybe the discussion time, particularly at the higher education, the research level, we are really in a very dangerous situation in India. Is alone the funds are the problem, the quality of people, or our approach, where do we stand? There are a lot of things which we need to do that. So maybe if something comes to discussion time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ganesh.